go. We are cruising into full mode this afternoon, and it is my honor to introduce Mr. Kevin Cox, who's the director of the CDM program. Previously, he was a CISO at DOJ, had a variety of roles in the federal law enforcement community. When I met Kevin over at DOJ and sort of observed him, I said, wow, this guy is he's a stealth bomber. Silent but deadly, no bombs, of course, but this guy doesn't get rattled. He's slow, he's steady. When he did something, it was well thought out and it was very impactful. And when I got over to DHS and saw that they needed a CDM program manager, I said, I think we got the guy here. And I've seen him deal with the Hill, OMB, GAO, all the other departments and agencies. He's got the skills to deal with all these stakeholders. He certainly has the cyber chops. He's from West Virginia, he cares about the environment. Father was a career civil servant. Him and Karen go way back, as it turns out. And I think what's really important, he doesn't just care about the technology, so he doesn't chase that. And most of all, when this guy talks, people will listen to him because they know he's the real deal. Kevin, over to you.
Thank you, Luke. Always a
And he's
pleasure
a chicken farmer too, by the way. I had to mention that. Sorry, Kevin.
10 eggs a day coming through. Yeah, thanks, Luke. Always a pleasure to be in these events with you, and certainly appreciate the opening. And it's a real privilege to work in these events with you. So thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Cox, as Luke had said. I'm the program manager for the Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation program within the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency within DISA. DHS, CISA within DHS. And what I'm here today to talk to you all about is the direction for CDM now that we're in FY21, what we're accomplishing, and the way forward in terms of as we move beyond 21, what the areas we want to help agencies out with in terms of software protection, the overall push to reduce the attack surface so the adversary has a harder time or is not able to get into networks at all, and to really work with all of the other cyber programs within the federal government to continue to strengthen the cybersecurity posture across the agencies and really help the agencies with risk management. So if we could go on to the first slide. Let me see, maybe I have to advance that.
Oh, I got it. Hopefully you see that.
Okay, very good. I never like to assume everybody knows what CDM is, so I'll give everybody a quick overview.
Really do
CDM
appreciate
started around
that.
2012. The aim is to help agencies across the federal.gov, the civilian side, get the right protections in place so that they can answer a series of really fundamental questions to their environment. And once they can answer these fundamental questions, they can really build on that and really bring the right technologies, right processes to bear against the adversary. So the first area we wanted to help agencies understand is what's connected to their network, what is on the network. So we started out with asset management. The idea here is to work with agencies to ensure that they have the right solutions in place to be able to identify each and every device that is connected to their network. The next question is helping understand who the users are, who's connected to the network. And so working to help agencies understand who their credentialed users are, who their privileged users are, more importantly, and make sure that the proper protections are in place around the data, around the assets and the environment. We next have expanded out into the network, into understanding what's happening on the network, how is it protected, understanding the boundary between beyond the on-prem and out to the cloud, also helping agencies understand what type of computing they have on mobile devices. We'll talk a little bit more about that here momentarily. And finally, following the OPM breach back in the 2015 timeframe, there was a real push to ensure that agencies had the right protections around data on their high-value assets. And so that's our fourth capability area to ensure the right technologies are in place that the systems, the high-value asset systems, are properly architected, et cetera. The key here is then to help agencies feed that awareness up into an agency dashboard so that they can make the appropriate decisions based on the risk data that they have in front of them. And so we started out with our original dashboard, built out the dashboard infrastructure, but what we found was with the volume of data coming in, we really needed a big data platform that would help with the total scalability that a number of agencies had to have in place given their federated nature, had to ensure the platform was high performance and had the right analytics and that where needed we could customize. So when we completed the new dashboard contract last year, we awarded it to Elasticsearch, the system integrator is ECS. And the idea here is that it will give us all of those characteristics: scalability, high performance, proper customization needs would be fulfilled, and the analytics for helping agencies get the maximum use of their data and information. And then we summarize that data up to the federal dashboard so that agencies can, federal leadership can see what the landscape looks like across the agencies so that they can help make agencies aware of critical vulnerabilities, help identify which agencies may need additional assistance on the cyber front and bring that to bear. We'll go on to the next slide. Coming up here. So the way that this is set up, we call it the ABCD architecture. Many of you may be familiar with it, but the idea is we get the sensors down at the A layer, feed that data up from the sensors, up from the technologies to the Bravo layer, the B layer, so that the data can be normalized, standardized, so that it can be used for reporting. And that then gets fed up to the Charlie layer, the C layer, so that agencies can get object level access to the information, understanding specific endpoints, specific vulnerabilities, software misconfigurations, et cetera. And then, as I mentioned prior, we summarize data up to federal leadership to the D layer. Both the C and D layers use Elasticsearch, as mentioned, the ELK stack, Elastic, Logarithm, and Kibana for the visualization piece. We'll move on to the next slide. So I wanted to just give everybody an understanding of how the CDM program has continued forward with the pandemic, how we've been able to continue the work that we already had started, as well as really help agencies that had specific mission areas relating to COVID to make sure that they had the proper protections in place. So when the pandemic hit, we worked closely with the agencies, worked closely with the system integrators as the agencies were moving into more of a remote work posture to ensure that a lot of the work that we had underway could continue and that it could be done remotely. And fortunately, we were able to do that. The other key piece was to ensure that if there were agencies that had specific mission-related functions that were being impacted by adversaries to prevent or gain access to data relating to COVID or COVID vaccines, et cetera, that we could accelerate CDM solutions. So we have been able to do that. The acquisition approach we've taken in CDM is called CDM Defend, with those Defend task orders that we helped get in place with our partner GSA. We have a lot of flexibility to develop what are called requests for services that provide specific technical direction in any number of the capability areas that I mentioned prior. And so through that flexibility, we've been able to accelerate particular CDM capabilities to a couple agencies tied to the COVID response. And that has really gone a long way to really being more flexible in the program and bringing value to agencies beyond what was originally envisioned with the CDM delivery mechanism. We'll move on to the next slide. So where we're continuing, we estimate we have at least 80% of the federal.gov endpoints to the agencies in terms of visibility, but those remaining gaps, we're continuing to work with the agencies to get those filled, get the right technologies in place. We want to get as close to 100% for the agencies as possible. Likewise, with identity and access management, we want to make sure that the agencies get as close to 100% visibility in terms of who their credentialed users are, getting that centralized up to the dashboard, and also, as I mentioned prior, the privileged users too. We're in the process now of delivering a new dashboard, the new Elasticsearch dashboard, so that will continue. But one of the other key functions that we're focused on this year in order to fully operationalize CDM is to make sure that the data through the normalization and standardization process has high quality as it moves up from the sensors up to the dashboard. So we have a data quality management initiative in place, working with the agencies, working with the system integrators to get the data to the level it needs to be for reporting purposes, as well as for operationalization through things like our new AWARE algorithm, which will help understand each agency's security posture. So that's a key effort for us in 21. We also have some data protection management pilots underway with one agency, working with 3 of their high-value assets, making good progress there, having communications with other agencies as well to broaden out those pilots and really make sure that the data associated with the high-value assets is properly secured. Finally, we've been working with a number of key agencies, as well as our partners within CISA, to get the right security solutions in place, and also helping agencies get visibility on their mobile assets and start to bring to bear mobile threat detection capabilities to ensure agencies are properly protecting their mobile environment. Go on to the next slide. Coming up here. This is, there's a lot of information here. Recognize we're not going to cover it all, but you'll have access to these slides. You can peruse the information at your leisure. But what this really helps show is the number of different accomplishments we've had with the program. We still have a ways to go, and 21 is really a key year for us in terms of really achieving the promise of CDM, getting the dashboards, working with the near real-time data, helping the agency get the full of visibility as possible, and operationalizing that data so that they can bring the CDM data to bear as they work to manage their risk within their environment. And a couple things I want to point out here. Towards the middle of the slide, we talk about the dashboard ecosystem. We have the infrastructure in place for the dashboard communications with 60 agencies. We now have that new dashboard in place with 3 agencies, and then we are working with an additional 7 to get the Elasticsearch dashboard in place. The key thing is here that with the new dashboard in place and with that communications infrastructure already in place with 60 agencies, we'll be able to quickly connect up the new dashboard, get the feeds up to the federal dashboard as it comes online, and make a lot of progress there in getting the visibility that CDM has promised. Talked about the AWARE algorithm. We, on the mobile side, also towards the center, a little lower on the center of the slide, starting to work with agencies with alignment with their enterprise mobility management system to start to bring that mobile asset data into the mix as far as understanding mobile assets in their environment. And then another key area over towards the right-hand, the far column on the slide towards the center is the shared service platform. This is one of the achievements of the CDM program to this point. This was our first venture out into the cloud. So we're working with the smaller agencies, what are called the non-CFO Act agencies, get CDM sensors in place. And rather than deploy a dashboard to a small agency that might have like 20 personnel, we established a shared platform where the sensors will report up to that shared platform. It's multi-tenant, so the agency will be able to access their dashboard out in the cloud, visibility that they would with having a full deployment in their environment. We have new shared service contract in place, expanding out the services offered to the small and micro agencies so that they get the full capabilities as do the cabinet level agencies. And then again, working on the data quality side with some pilots on high value assets. overview of what we've accomplished so far and where we're continuing to work and continuing to make progress. We'll go on to the next slide. So for 21, our priorities will continue to be the asset management and then identity and access management gap fills. As I mentioned, we've started with the mobile side of things, working with some agencies, but expanding that out to bring that mobile asset data up to the dashboard. Getting the new dashboard out to all of the agencies. Our aim is to have that in place. The original dashboard retired, the new dashboard ecosystem in place by the end of 21, as well as the federal dashboard, and get that reporting working, get the data quality in place, and start to really operationalize the CDM data. Cloud security efforts, continuing some pilots. We're working with a handful of agencies as well as with NIST, the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, on some cloud pilots, and then expanding out the pilots that we're doing with agency high-value assets. And then at the bottom here, really focused on that data quality management effort to make sure that ultimately the data is fully operationalized, that it does reflect the reality down on the ground, and agencies can use the data, transform it into information, and help with their risk management processes. Come to the next slide. So just in conclusion, really working to explain what CDM is all about. It's really looking at these three core values for our program. We want to work with agencies, we want to work with our industry partners to lead in terms of getting the right visibility in place for agencies so that they can not only do the continuous diagnostics for their systems, understanding what their systems look like, but also perform the mitigation actions as well to really help secure their systems. We want to ensure that we're accountable for the taxpayer dollars that we're entrusted with, making sure that we're delivering good value, that we're achieving our mission objectives in order to help the agencies in the long run protect our citizens' data across the various mission areas. And finally, partnership is really essential for us. This is not just a DHS CISA program, it's a federal-wide program that is it's really critical that we work with our partners in the agencies, we work with our partners in industry in order to achieve our objectives and be successful. So we continue to follow these values on a daily basis, and they really serve as the foundation for all that we do. And we'll go on to the next slide. There's some contact information here. Oh, I do want to mention, so the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is ongoing, and you see the hashtag here, BeCyberSmart, and then the website, CISA.gov/cyber-month. There's a number of different CISA activities that folks can participate in virtually, so just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And then the final slide, I believe, has the contact information. There you go. The website for the CDM program, and then our outreach, CDM at CISA.dhs.gov. And with that, I'll turn it back to Luke for any questions that you all might have, and help provide any more information you might need.
Fantastic. So let's start with one that everyone's always interested. As soon as you say pilot, they're real interested to hear about, what were the results of that pilot? What are you finding? You all did some great work with SBA, et cetera. What are you finding in these pilots, and what are that sort of those nuggets that you're learning that you're going to crank back into sort of the next iteration, if you will?
So we've got pilots occurring in a number of different areas. First, with the dashboard, wanted to start out with a handful of agencies just to make sure that the new technology worked, that it did achieve the gains that we want in terms of scalability, performance, et cetera. And in those pilots, to this point, we've had a lot of real good indicators that the technology is working the way we want it to, that it will help us achieve the high performance for the agencies to be able to quickly use their data use it properly. So that's really the keys that we're finding so far with the dashboard pilots. The pilots on the cloud side, working with one particular agency that has a lot of their assets in the cloud, to make sure that we can work with the agency, work with the cloud service provider to get the same visibility on their data in the cloud that we do when we deploy sensors to the on-prem network. And what we have found is, again, in partnership with those two individual or two organizations, the agency as well as the CSP, is that visibility is available. A lot of it we need to make sure that the right language is in the cloud security or the cloud contract, the contract in place with the CSP. But beyond that, it's once all the proper contractual pieces are in place, that the CSP, in association with the agency, can get the right data in order to meet the CDM requirements, with the idea that the agency gets the visibility they need on the data and to ensure that it's properly protected. They know who has access to it, et cetera. Finally, the pilots that we have underway on the high-value asset side, what we really have found there is a lot of the high-value assets, really maybe most of the high-value assets in the federal government, there's a lot of complexity there. And because of the nature of the system, it does have a lot of visibility. It's got very sensitive data tied to a mission-specific need. We have to be very careful in terms of how we deploy the technology, how we architect out the system, so that we don't disrupt a mission-critical system. At the same time, we want to make sure these mission-critical systems have the right technologies in place, are properly architected, that we can modernize them where appropriate. And to do that, we really have to, as you had mentioned at the top of the introductions there, Luke, it's really kind of slow and steady wins the race. We want to scramble to get the technology in place, the security in place, but if we scramble and make the wrong deployment or architect the system in the wrong way, we really set ourselves back. So in some ways, slow and steady wins the race on this is really the right phrase, is that we have to properly understand the system, the architecture, where we want to go with it, and then design it out properly, work with the agency closely, with the mission holders closely, get the right technologies in place so that the solution that is implemented does have sustainability over the long run. So that's a key outcome of the pilots we've done thus far.
No doubt, and I want to talk about software security in a minute, but yeah, you touched on acquisition earlier, and I know early on in the program, right, that it was being delivered in a certain kind of way, right? It was sort of, hey, we have a plate full of peas here, eat them, and we don't care if you like corn or something else better, that's what we're serving. It's peas. Get over it. And you evolve that program, right, to say, now we can have sort of an a la carte, right? As long as you eat your vegetables here, we're good. And that made a big difference in phase 2, phase 3. Do you anticipate any further sort of tweaking of how one acquires those goods and services and then ultimately delivers them as you go forward with the program?
Yeah, that's a key effort we had underway with the program, is to really make it as flexible as possible. The one thing that we want to do, so I mentioned in the presentation the idea of the request for service, and that's really what enables the flexibility. We're able to really stay focused on the requirements for the program, take a look at what the agencies already have in place. If their solutions meet the requirements, then it's just a matter of integrating the system up with the CDM data flow, and then where there's gaps, getting the right technology in place. The request for service allows us to take all of that into account. So if it's an integration effort, we can simply work with the agency. They can keep the tools in place and move forward with that. If they need additional technologies, we can build that into the request for service as well, and then bring the proper levels of integration and development support in. One of the things we want to do is to make sure that that request for service process is as efficient as possible, that it moves as quickly as possible, because we don't want to get hung up with an RFS that takes a year to develop when there's an immediate need. So we really want to streamline that, make sure that we can get things moving as quickly as possible, but at the same time, making sure that we capture the requirements properly for the agency and getting the right solutions in place.
So we've talked a lot about sort of the, I say we collectively throughout the day, sort of the guards, gates, locks, down to, what's on your network, who's on your network, the integrity of the environment, et cetera, and really has spent quite a bit of time today talking about sort of the integrity of the software itself, all the way down to, a software bill of materials and supply chain, et cetera. You're more familiar than most about what the FBI had done over there for years, and some of that's been incorporated into some of the stuff that Grant was speaking to us about earlier. Any thoughts about where CDM may evolve into that area as far as instrumentation in regards to getting some granularity on software integrity, et cetera?
Yeah, so one thing I want to mention is the Quality Service Management Office that's a partner within CISA to the CDM program. They're looking at a shared service offering potentially in the future for supply chain, and that's an area where the CDM program could align with them. But in terms of both the software integrity, software checks, that with us getting the real promise of CDM delivered in 21, with getting that visibility of the environment, the assets, the users, that helps agencies have a better understanding of what their software installation looks like today, and helps them get a better understanding to make sure that the software they have deployed already is properly configured. They can make sure that software that is approved is on the network, and software that is not approved, that they are aware that it's there, and they can work with the offices and users to uninstall that. So that foundational approach will be achieved in 21, but then we can then look at additional technologies potentially in the future where we can scan particular software for vulnerabilities, for misconfigurations, databases potentially for like OWASP Top 10. So there's really a bright future in terms of what else CDM can bring to bear. We'll continue to be focused on our requirements, but in terms of the flexibility, the different types of technologies, the alignments we can do with the quality service management shared services, it's really the interface is there to align with that, and the opportunities are there, given the right prioritization, given the right funding, be able to support the agencies on a wider basis in those many different areas.
That sounds very promising as we sort of move up that value chain, right? That's real important, and you've sort of mastered that ecosystem, as you're stating it in this 2B environment. Question that did come up here is, does CDM work differently with the CSPs that offer that SaaS solution? What was the delivery model included in your cloud security pilot? It's a good question, right? As we sort of broaden that aperture, right? Outside of the guards, gates, and locks, how does CDM fit into that? What is it? What is it not? How does it interact with the CSPs?
Yeah, the key that we found with the initial pilot was to take a look at what was already in place. What was the visibility that the agency had from the CSP, and then seeing where improvements could be made, where working with the agency, working with the CSP, we could help get visibility for other key data elements, so that the agency widened their visibility of how their data was protected, what was happening around their data, who had access. So the pilots we focused on, or the first pilot we focused on working with the one agency, was really working with what was already in place. The efforts we have with the NIST National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence is really looking at other elements that potentially agencies may not have yet negotiated into their cloud service contract, where we can bring additional technologies to bear. We can also look at where we align new technologies outside of the CSP, potentially putting technologies in front of the connection to the CSP so that the agency can get visibility on the traffic going to and coming from the CSP in the appropriate way, so that it doesn't slow down traffic, but does give the agency the continuous visibility they would need in terms of who and what is accessing their data. So really, in that way, everything is on the table. We want to work with federal leadership, work with our partners in the agencies and in DHS, get the right set of solutions. And it might vary cloud implementation to cloud implementation, but making sure that we can get the right approaches, right standards in place so that agencies ultimately can ensure their data is protected.
Kevin, we can't thank you enough, and we really appreciate you incorporating all that flexibility into that program to adapt to the changing environment. Thank you for everything that you've done and everything that you're going to do. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Luke. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.